Okay, then we're ready to start. So welcome to all of you to this NORA.startup webinar about women in AI. My name is Heidi Dahl. I'm a senior data scientist at Posten, so the Norwegian Postal Service, where I started this autumn after 15 years as a research scientist at Sintef. I'm also a WIDS ambassador, so ambassador for women in data science. So this is a global initiative with 200 yearly events, hundreds of thousands of participants, and being visible as an ambassador for a program like this. I often get questions like, where can I find good women to hire, and why aren't there more of them? And well, I want to do something, but I don't know what. So my hope for this webinar is that we will have some good discussions, talk through some of these issues, reflect a little bit, and hopefully it will be interesting to all of us. So to get started, I'd suggest we do a roundtable among the participants to learn a little bit more about them. So I would like to ask the rest of you to introduce yourself, tell us who you are, what you're doing, and where you want to go, what your ambitions are. So let's start with Inga Strumke, who is a postdoc at NTNU, so representing academia today.
Yeah, hi. As you said, my name is Inga. I've been in and out of academia a lot, but I guess I figured out that academia is where my heart belongs. So we'll see how much I'll go in and out. My master's is in theoretical physics, which is pretty male dominated. And since then, I've kind of stayed in male dominated businesses. So I've been in the oil industry, I've been in consultancy and accounting, and now I'm working in machine learning and AI. I've been asked frequently in my career, why are there not more women in academia and in STEM? And I've always kind of thought that, but I'm one of those who are in, you know, so maybe we should ask women outside, but then, for instance, I have a sister who is outside academia and outside STEM. And when I ask her, why aren't you in academia or STEM? She's like, why should I be? So maybe the solution isn't asking those who are outside afterwards. So we who are inside will just have to wreck our brains. And I really look forward to doing that with you.
Thank you. Then we go on to Marit Rødvann, who is co-founder and CEO of Strise. Welcome.
It's important to say Strise because Strise in Norwegian does not sound cool at all. So
sorry.
Yeah. So my name is Marit. I am a co-founder and CEO of Strise. We are a 22 people AI startup based. It was originally based on research from NTNU actually, but now we're an Oslo-based company. And what we do is basically analyze and connect large amounts of online data about businesses and people involved in businesses to create a customer platform that helps automate a lot of manual work related to for the financial industry, particularly related to anti-money laundering, know your customers, having a risk-based overview of large customer portfolios and so forth. So that's what we do. And I'm excited to be here to talk more about women in AI, because that is a super important topic and something that is high on the agenda at Strise as well, because we really want to get more women involved in every part of the business, and it's hard. So excited for the discussion.
Thank you. And the last panelist is also WIDS ambassador. Mia Ryan is manager of analytics and data platform at Red Pill Pro Analytics, and she'll also represent as one of the people who hire data scientists and AI experts today. So can you say a few words about yourself?
Yeah, kind of as I said, my name is Mia Ryan, and I think you said a bit about that, but I work in a subsidiary of a company called Red Pill Pro. So we started an own subsidiary called Red Pill Pro Analytics. And what we do is basically we work with data platforms and the architecture and infrastructure around to get the sort of AI modeling functioning and enabling data scientists and AI practitioners. Yeah, in my list, as you said, it's probably hiring. And I get that question, or we actually get a question a lot because we're hiring a lot of people. And it's like, why are you not hiring more women? And there's a very interesting question because in my eyes, there are none, but there are several reasons to that. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to discussing that today.
So thank you. So I hope we can have an engaged discussion here. So there's no raising of hands, so everybody just chip in when you want to. So I guess a question to start with is why? So why is it important to have diversity? Why is it important to have a gender balance in AI, whether it's in the workplace or in education?
Yeah, well, I can just start off with some thoughts. And the product that we develop, it's an end user product. It's you log into the browser. People who work in banks and financial institutions go in there to make important business decisions, and our users are all genders. So it's really important that people who design and make this tool, have all kinds of different perspectives. So we're sure to really make a good experience for all of our users and not just being biased towards one particular group. And I can really see that, some of our designers are, our lead designer is a woman and she has different thoughts than someone else and might be more concerned with different topics than someone else. So it's just to make inclusive products.
I think another thing is that what we kind of see when we're hiring is that a lot of women are very into, are there a lot of other women in your company, in your team, is there something that, will I be alone? And I see that if you have more women in your team or on your workspace, then kind of it gets more women in as well. You can use that as sort of a recruiting thing to do. So I would suppose that if you get more women in, then I think you will get just substantially more women in after that as well.
So it's reaching a critical mass of women in the workforce.
Like a hockey stick. So yeah.
And then also you can't really make the opposite case. You can't really make the case for excluding half the world's population from a field. Then if I mean, Grace Hopper invented the compiler. That was a woman. A woman founded the world's first university. One of the most important conservation law theorems in physics was brought about by a woman. So it's difficult to make the case for not having women. So there's obviously something strange and wrong with the system that somehow doesn't engage women. And it's not so strange and confusing if you look at it historically, because we're very unfortunate now to live in a society where women have equal opportunities as men, but this has been reality for a teeny tiny speck of history. I mean, not too many years ago, women working on problems was considered dangerous for us, so it's there are deep historical reasons kind of for that women don't find their way into some of these subjects and sectors. So you can easily make an ethical case for having to turn this around because it's deeply unfair that we ended up like this.
And I also wanted to pick up on something you said, because yes, we are equal now, but it's the truth with modification, right? So you have systemic issues, so the way society structures, and both in terms of the bureaucracies and in terms of social structures. So what do you guys think about the challenges we face in terms of getting more women into the work or into AI, but not for this specific discussion?
So I think I can just begin. I think there are, of course, a myriad of challenges, but what kind of bugs me is that it starts so early and it's so deeply systemic that it can seem a bit overwhelming to try and address it. It's this cliche that when you want to give a compliment to a small boy, you say, "Oh, så flink du är," "Oh, you're so good at this, and look what you built." And when you want to give a compliment to a small girl, "Oh, så fin du är," right? "Oh, you're so cute and you're so what do I know, visually appealing or sedate or whatever." And it's just deeply rooted in us, and we maybe we don't even do it consciously or on purpose, but it kind of starts already there. So saying then at the university level or at a high school level, like, why don't more women choose technical subjects or whatever, if that has kind of been if they've been conditioned that way since childhood, it's a very difficult problem to start addressing so late. Like, even high school is a bit late. So I'm not saying that we can't, it's just that the problem has so many facets that it's difficult to say that here is this one thing that we need to change.
It's actually with you, sorry, but if you go back about 100 years as well, I mean, women didn't really have a function outside the home. So if you didn't have a husband, if you didn't have children, then you really didn't have a function. So I mean, we were coming from that into and several, basically 1,000 years of that, and suddenly you're coming into a place where everything is going to be all upside down. Women are going to go out, and I mean, I think it's just a lot of those traditions and that history is so kind of, what's it called, gjennomsyret in our society today, that it's kind of hard to break out from. So it's happening gradually, but I don't think it's something that would be like a complete landslide of suddenly there's like 100,000 women in tech, but it's a slow process, sadly.
Yeah, and I also think it's important to just highlight all of the exciting opportunities that AI entails. It doesn't have to mean that you're going to be the backend engineer of a big AI project or in charge of the data pipeline. But for instance, for us, we have a huge, like, it's complicated tech and there's so many opportunities, but it all comes down to creating a user interface that's super easy to use and that automates some manual task for a person, and just having that, like, being able to translate complex technology into a product that's easy to use, that just has a lot of empathy on behalf of the end user. There's so many different roles there. So I think just not necessarily thinking that women in AI have to all be like backend engineers, but realizing there's so many different roles that people can fill. It's just, that's a good start as well. It could be, I see that at least on our side. One of our product philosophies at Strice is, it's a tweet that we've had, it's now up on the wall. It's like, users flock to simple product. Product adds features and take user for granted. Users flock to simple product. And staying true to that philosophy is actually really hard because, you know, it's so easy to just add features and make something complex, but it's really hard to make something simple. And just being able to execute all the way from like raw data to a functionality in a simple product philosophy requires a lot of different thoughts, and women, you know, are good at certain things that could really help into that. So yeah, I think just broadening the scope of what AI actually, a job in AI means as well, could be an important thing.
So if I may then just turn that input back on you guys, because we started fairly dark and this is difficult and it's important, but to turn to something positive. I'm guessing since you all work in AI in some way or another, maybe you could say a few words about what role you have in AI and what makes you enthusiastic about it, what's fun? And maybe also what advantages do you see for women in these kinds of roles?
So I can start if you want.
Yeah.
So I'm I know that many people who work in AI are very inspiring and motivating, like Marit, and say we want to solve actual problems and make machines do tasks that people would otherwise have to do. And I'm kind of on the opposite scale of the spectrum. I studied physics because I want to figure out how the universe works. And that is kind of still my only motivation in life. I want to know how stuff works. And once I figure out how it works, I'm not so interested anymore in implementing it. And that was also, and I'm owning this, and that was also why I went to AI, because I was like, hey, machines can figure out how parts of the universe work. How do they do that? This is very interesting. And as a researcher in academia, I actually get to dig around in this. I mean, okay, I have to publish and I have to teach, but otherwise I get to just really dig around and be very curious. And I don't think that this experience is different for women and men at all. I mean, I'm not saying that other learning experiences are different for the two genders, but the kind of, I'm not seeing gender differences in performing the kind of work that I do. whenever I've seen differences in how the genders are treated or perceived, it's more systemic, or related to the social aspects of it, or whatever. Yeah.
And I think that can continue just how you kind of building on that you don't really have, there are so many different roles in AI, and I actually studied law and business administration. That's my start, and I kind of wild into this area. I just started working in a company that dealt with data in real estate, like prop tech and fintech, and I just suddenly said, wow, this is really cool, this is so interesting. So I was just trying to dig more and more into it, and that's how I kind of figured out, okay, I really want to work with this, but I don't really have any kind of data science background. I kind of do it on an amateur basis, but I kind of wanted to understand, how does all this actually go through? If you have a model and you have an application, how does this actually, you query this from that, how does this happen? And that's kind of how I was drawn into it. So I'm kind of just as much as tech interested as I am in analytics, and how does this actually work together? Yeah, so I think for my part right now, my ambition is just to kind of, you want to get companies data driven. You want to start small and just figure out little business problems and getting them towards using AI and ML a lot more in their everyday business. And also facilitating for every kind of aspect of the analytics, all the different processors, and also making it available for everyone, so that even people without kind of a heavy data science background can also actually use analytics for doing their work. So that's kind of how I got into it.
Yeah, well, I got into AI. Well, I studied at NTNU at cybernetics and robotics. I wasn't really that good at it, or didn't have that much interest either, to be honest. So I did my master's at the School of Entrepreneurship at NTNU. So you got into the whole like startup thing. And I worked as an entrepreneur in residence at NTNU, where my job was like, find a research project you want to start a business off. And that's how I came across what came to be Strice, as it was a research project at the time, using how to use graph technology, natural language processing, and machine learning to analyze large amounts of data. And this was, when the AI hype began, and I thought, that sounds cool. I have no idea what problem it will solve. We'll figure it out. I thought the technology was just fun to work with. And, I met my two co-founders, and we got Strice off the ground. But and my job today, well, I'm the CEO, so it's about leading the team. And when we talk about AI as well, like all the efforts that goes into making Strice a great product, it's not like it's only just one person programming like one smart algorithm. There's so many parts that goes into it, and what we achieve as a team, that's the output we achieve as a team, that's the most important. And just it's good to have all perspectives, team members joining that, and just makes it more fun to go to work as well when the workplace is more diverse. So my job is just to make sure we have a great team, and I do try to spend a lot of time getting that message out to women as well. We had a company presentation at NTNU for 200 or girls studying at NTNU, and we try to at least try to inspire them with a tote bag. So like, we command a shift, make space for women in tech. I thought that was like clever. It was super popular. And we have like internship programs where we really encourage women, like students, to apply so they can, just get a taste of what it's like to work in an AI business like early on, don't have to alongside their studies. And that's been an important thing as well. And in every recruitment process, just making sure you at least get 50-50 in terms of genders to like the last candidates. So just making that effort. So at least like when you choose the best candidate, at least you'll know that you've made an effort looking at the entire talent pool. But it's really hard to recruit for a tech company to have it 50-50 for women and men. Like, we are not there ourselves, and I'm a female CEO, and I find it extremely hard. So we haven't really cracked the code yet.
And I can really second that. it's super hard. And the thing is that we're doing analytics, which is kind of, there's slightly more women in data science than there is kind of in data engineering. That's what we're also hiring for. But in our company, Red Pill Impro as a whole, I mean, we're going really deep down in the stack. It's a lot of infrastructures, a lot of kind of managed services. And to be honest, it's just, there are no women. I mean, there are a few, and we're really struggling to get a hold of them. And we've started to recruit abroad and start to figure out, is there anyone that kind of want to move to Norway maybe? Could we help with that? Just to sort of get the female percentage up. But right now, I mean, we are 180 people total in Nordics, and I think we're under 10% of women. And a lot of us are actually in the management. So it's very, very hard. And I really wish that there were more, because it's because of the diversity, that is because of the tasks that you're supposed to solve, and you need different sets of eyes on it. And so yeah, I really wish that in the time to come that this will even out.
So I just really want to kind of chip in here and compliment Marit on what they're doing. I think is really important, and I can totally empathize with what both of you are saying, because in at the NTNU also, we're really, at my faculty, we're trying to hire women to do PhDs, but it's difficult to find many of them. And the reason is, I think, that there are just more, what's the English word for forbilde? More
role models.
Thank you. More male role models than female ones, and this is kind of a negative spiral then, because if you can't recruit, you can't make more role models, and then that makes recruitment more difficult, and this is kind of how the bad spiral goes around. And I mean, earlier when Marit said you don't have to be a full stack developer or something, I just automatically pictured a man, because most developers I know are men. And I don't know, if you say engineer, maybe you still picture a man also. So it's just, we're still not used to picturing women, I think, in these roles, unfortunately. So how then will young girls do it? How will young girls be conditioned just to think about that this is a perfectly natural career for me to choose? But we're in a time now where we have to make really deep historical changes, and that is bound to be difficult. So I don't know if you guys have kind of thought about what we should, like what concretely, what we can do to, I mean, yeah, Marit already said, kind of try to inspire students to apply for jobs, but because structural changes are really difficult, and very often structures are abstract. So how can we kind of concretize around this problem?
Yeah, well, my answer to that is just like, I'm like super committed that my company and I spend a lot of time with at the universities, like because that's, up and coming generation. And God, I think we were 7 women in my class at cybernetics and robotics, and suddenly I was at NTNU holding a presentation for 200 girls studying computer science and other technical subjects. So you're kind of taken aback on that. Like were there even 200 when I was at school? But so just really being committed to spend that time. And as the leader of the company, I think it's really important that I spend that much time doing it as well, because other people can do marketing and do the design engineering, and my job is just to inspire others to come into the company and do those roles. So I'm super committed to spending a lot of time on that. And as of now, I think, yeah. And then, yeah.
Yeah, that's very good. But I also kind of wonder, do we have to kind of change the narrative of how we communicate what working in tech is? I mean, do we kind of need to pitch some other use cases? I don't know, but it's just, if you maybe go around to 16, 17-year-old girls and you ask, what do you see if you, how would you picture yourself in a role in tech, and see what they would answer? Would they say, I mean, yeah, I would sit we picture the guy developer, or would they say something else? I mean, and it kind of connects with the role modeling part, that maybe we need some different role models, some different use cases on how this actually can be really fun.
Yeah, I think so. And just as I said earlier, it requires a team effort. Like to actually deploy an AI system into a product in a live environment with users, that's such an endeavor. I mean, it's not just something you do by yourself. It requires just this whole range of roles. Like you need you need designers, you need different engineering roles, you need people to think about the product, you need to have like a philosophy on how to manage like data and the roadmap and all these things. And I think in that there's so many roles that women could do really well, and it isn't within AI, even though you're not like necessarily down deep in the coding. So in those roles as well, we really strive to show that you can work with AI and you can have, maybe even more impact and influence than if you were the coder yourself. But there's many ways into AI.
Yeah, and it's so much about, I mean, how we work. I mean, we set up data platforms for our customers so they can get more data driven. And in that is like, one thing is the technical part, but the thing is that it is a cultural change. It's learning to think more about data and how you can actually use that data into solving your real business problems, your innovation. And as you might, it says there's so many different roles in that. I mean, you can do anything from that, doing that process, just keeping that gatekeeping, that's a data process. And you don't really have to get deep down and nitty gritty with the technology. I mean, just look at me. I didn't come from a technical background, but still I'm kind of working with the data platforms, and it's just in a more conceptual way, in an architectural way. So yeah, I think there's a lot of different roles that, I mean, it would be nice to highlight that you do not, if coding is not really your cup of tea, then well, there are lots of other things to do.
So that's actually reflected in a comment we got in the comment section now, where things are moving here, but someone mentioned that you can include people with different backgrounds. It's not necessarily that we need to get women to become computer scientists in order to get into AI, as we've talked about. People from lots of different areas come into the subject. And to be honest, for my part, working in data science as a sort of framework over AI as a way of using data to solve problems, my experience is that there are people from many backgrounds participating in solving the problem. You need decision makers to make sure you're solving an actual problem that is prioritized by the company. You need people who can communicate outwards and inwards. You need contact with people working on, for example, if you want to optimize something in a factory, you need to talk to the people working with the machines. And you also need good facilitators, which may be a more female role. I'm hesitating a bit with the stereotypes here, but a lot of this, well, at least to me, a key success factor is getting people to talk together and getting people from different backgrounds to talk together.
And yeah, I think that's really, I mean, you need people skills, basically. And I mean, a lot of women are very good at that. So it's kind of when you're doing a change in the business. I mean, yeah, so you definitely need people to go talk to each other, and you need to be that mediator in between them and speak kind of the different languages for the different areas that you're talking to. So yeah.
So on one side, I kind of agree with you, and I do like this perspective. But on the other hand, I'm a bit worried that this will just help reinforce the stereotypes that we already have. I mean, if you imagine any robot that is supposed to be friendly or an assistant, then that is a woman. And Eliza, Tay, Sophia. I mean, even in the movie Her, right? Or this Erica, the stupid Japanese robot who's supposed to be a bit like perfect looking. She's displayed as she is a woman, right? And I think that we really need to do away with the stereotypes. Maybe this appeals to, I don't know, gender fluidity or whatever. And I agree that not everybody has to be a developer or a coder. But it's strange to me that we say this to women. Like you can also join. You don't have to be a programmer. We don't say that to men. Or to boys, right? So I'm afraid that we are on a bit of a kind of a dangerous path here, if the way of including is by kind of reinforcing stereotypes.
Yeah, I get to what you're saying. It's definitely it's a point there.
Yeah. It's also about kind of taking the what's it called, taking tabbrodden off, or taking that away, the kind of dangerous part about dangerous in part about going into AI, but actually I see your point very much, and it's kind of yeah, how this is going in the discussion is maybe how it's actually going on the outside as well. So yeah.
I guess it just reinforces that, you know, there's no right answer, and a lot of efforts needs to be done in parallel, which is, you know, complicated and hard and not easy at all. But if it was easy, then it would have been 50-50 already. So
yeah, and I'm wondering a bit, because we're a fairly similar group, the people who are here talking today. We are all women, and we are of a
we're all
certain age, and we have a certain skin color. So as Inga mentioned in the beginning, it's also the issue of, well, people are asking us how to get more women into AI and tech, and I have the same issues as Inga there as well. I did it because I loved it. I thought it was really fun, but for most people, motivating them to do mathematics, for example, by telling them it's fun, it's not really effective. So are there anything we can do with regards to people who may find it interesting as a programmer, or as some of the other roles we've talked about?
It's a good point that, yeah, we are all in voluntarily and like all in, so may not be the right people. But just one thing, well, I see that as an important topic as well, just to make sure that at least the culture in the business is not biased towards, you know, a bro culture, or a very like, it needs to be like a neutral, inclusive culture. So at Strides, we have worked a lot with core values, and people think this is, when I say core values, everybody's like, oh, so boring. And I think about this word cloud that's on the wall with innovative and fast and smart and, you know, all these words. But we have done it a little bit differently, and we started with this like when we started the business, and we have 3 core values. And the first one is, you are Strides, make decisions, because at the end of the day, when you're a small company, like, your competitive advantage is your ability to make decisions fast and move fast. Second one is smart but uncomfortable. If something seems smart but uncomfortable, you should do it. And the third one is like kind of badly translated to English, but it is advantage Strides. Unexpected things happen, make them our advantage. And this is derived from this Norwegian ski instructor that, you know, every time he's interviewed in the sport news is like, no, today is advantage Norway, because, you know, regardless of the condition, it's like advantage Norway that day. And what I see in practice, and every Thursday we have an all hands meeting. At the end of that meeting, it's just half an hour, but at the last few minutes, we go through these core values and emphasize some examples. You know, have someone made a good decision? Have someone done something smart but uncomfortable? Is there any advantage Strides that something unexpected that we turn to our advantage? And by going away from core values, that's, you know, innovative, smart, whatever, that is really like a personal egenskap, or like a characteristic, by going to something that everybody can do. Like, everybody can make a decision, everybody can try to think positively about something, everybody can try to be smart and uncomfortable, but not everybody feels innovative. By going away from that type of core value to the one we're now, that fosters like more inclusivity, like inclusive environment, because it's not linked to something you are. And I'm just thinking that, you know, I feel that there's so many people at Strides that are innovative, but they would never describe themselves as that. So then we don't fall into the trap by having some core values that, like, yeah, we only look for innovative people. That could be like, it's only the people who raise their hand and say they are, who, you know, they're not really, but they say they are, and we would just hire the wrong people. Yeah. So just culture as well, making it like nice to show up at work.
Yeah, we've gotten, sorry, go ahead, Inga.
No, so just Mari said a word that kind of triggered me a bit, which was uncomfortable. And the comment here actually that just came in speaks right to that. I believe it's important to hire women despite lack of technical expertise. So this whole topic of should you have like a female quota and let more women in than you would otherwise do? Would you like sacrifice male positions and hire women instead? in order to kind of enforce a balance that should have been but isn't, and that is a bit of an uncomfortable discussion, right? Because it will feel unfair to the individuals or to the men that are not hired in order so that you can favor the women, and that is I think a bit of a deeper discussion about how we arrange our society or how we organize, because we have a very individualistic society, and I think that creating kind of enforcing these changes is easier in societies that are more less individually focused. So in China, it would be a lot easier to just make sure that more women get into tech or STEM or whatever, if the government decided that that's the way that it should be. But in a society such as Norway, people would probably protest, because why should you hire a woman if there is a more qualified man there? And the answer would of course be that women have historically suffered, so now for a short while men will have to suffer. But I feel that this part of the discussion is not sufficiently addressed. It's more like an uncomfortable truth under the rug that you don't address and complain about if you're politically correct. But I think the whole process would be easier if we dared to talk about it more. Say that actually no large historical changes have been achieved without individuals suffering for it, and talk about, is it worth to actually have some individuals suffer so that we can bring this about? And I'm sorry, Heidi, for bringing us back to the dark
No,
part of the discussion.
It's a very good point, but I wanted also to pick up on something you said, that it's unfair to the men who don't get hired. I would argue that it's also deeply unfair to the women who do get hired. I've had, let's say, someone I know in my network who's a male who was in a position to hire people, who said in an internal meeting that there are so few women applying, so no matter their qualifications, we hire them. Understood that the women here are crap, the men are great, but we need the women, so we hire them anyway. And you can imagine how that makes you feel as one of the few women in a meeting, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, can we then maybe then still have this optimistic twist on this? Well, if we want to do something like having a quota, which other systems do we need to make it successful? And what kind of framework do we need around these women to make sure that they get to the level they need to be?
And it's another part about this also is, I mean, one thing is that if you do a lot of tests on you, yeah, you can figure out that one is better than the other. But our experience as well is that it's kind of hard to figure out, because I mean, generally, I mean, this have no empirical values, just our view on this. But usually men are a lot better at selling themselves and also selling themselves higher. We've had women in interviews here that have come in, and we ask, okay, so what is your, what can you do? What is your special areas? What is your competence? And what do you feel really good about doing? And they've started talking about what they can't do, and saying that I'm really not very good at this or this and this, just to kind of hedge themselves from being hired of doing something that they're not really comfortable in doing. So I think that also is kind of an interesting discussion on how we actually, how we as recruiters sit there and choose who we kind of want in. I mean, we have to be honest. I mean, I'm hiring in consultants, and they have to go out to the customer and actually sell themselves. And I mean, on our behalf, then you would want someone that you know that is going to get that job that you're actually interviewing for out with the client. Yeah, I can totally understand that. Yeah, it would be very uncomfortable for the woman that comes in, but it's also like, do we actually figure out if these women are, maybe they're a lot more competent than we actually get to, or what's it called, than we actually figure out in the meeting or in the interview.
So if I may, I want to bring in a second perspective on that. So I do agree with you. but I heard a comment that really made me think the other day, because I feel often in academia and in mentoring in academia, women are told to be more like men. That's not the exact sentence, but it's stuff like lower your voice and don't wear pink and whatever. And also this, just fake it until you make it, just sell yourself, just apply for a job even though your qualifications don't totally match, because men do that. And of course that would be kind of a brilliant solution, but also it is kind of tell women to be more like men, even though maybe they don't want to. And just the great comment that I heard was from a PhD student who said, how about instead, if this was a less paternalistic society, how about we tell men to stop applying for jobs that they're not qualified for, so that we don't have to read 50 crappy applications instead of just 5, right? So so it's again this whole thing that maybe we can change the system instead of changing the women.
Yeah, and I also think that, because I totally agree with you, because I think it's actually up to us. I think it's actually up to us as recruiters to figure out how can we interview women better in order to actually get out what you're actually comfortable doing. Is there any kind of thing that motivates you a lot? How can you get your competence up? Are you about what area are you on? And I think that's just kind of changing the interview techniques as well. And not maybe doing the traditional way. So we're kind of thinking about how could we change that in order to make, well, just figure out how to address women in a different way to get this, to understand this better. I don't really have the answer here, but we're working on it, because I really want to have an interview that a woman comes in and feels really comfortable and kind of lets me know, and in a way that I understand truly what this woman is about. And that doesn't necessarily come out of doing a use case or doing a test case or getting her to code something. It might be something different. So yeah, we're working on that currently.
Yeah, that makes me really happy to hear, because, well, I mean, women have less testosterone. I mean, that's just a biological fact. We're not physically equivalent to men, right? And less testosterone means less impulsive, aggressive, and competitive, right? So then why should impulsive, competitive, and aggressive be like good traits to test in an interview? It's just it's almost like the process was rigged from the beginning. So it makes me really happy to hear what you're saying, that you're thinking about it from that perspective also.
Because I heard women that actually say no to interviews just because they know they're going to test it, and they know they have to go do a presentation on something that they're tested on. So so yeah, I think we agree on that.
It was for a job ad. It wasn't for product development, so it wasn't in the product department or in the tech department at Strice. So it was like for marketing. But it's equally important that when you're going to market an AI product, you do have some understanding and interest. But for that job ad, we took away all like formelle krav. So there was no krav to education or work experience, years of work experience, etc. We did end up hiring a man, but despite that, so intention was good. It was someone without education, like a formal education, so that's good as well, because in society as well, everybody does a master's almost, so like it can be hard for people who doesn't have like a formal degree to get a job, so that's a positive thing at least. But that's something we've been thinking about. And one thing, just like a general reflection, is that I saw some other companies in the startup community went out and had a campaign, and it resonated so well, because I've been thinking about the same. In a lot of job ads, you're like, oh, we're looking for a rock star full stack engineer to our team, and it's just these words, like, who feels like a rock star Monday morning at 9 a.m. and you're like on the bus on your way to work and browsing a new job? Like, nobody feels like a rock star. So I think it's really important to do that. Let's take a serious look on how we write job ads. It's a good place to start.
Continue. I just really wanted to comment on that, because I saw other kind of a contrary ad that answered one of those, said, I am not a rock star. I do not want to work for a super team. And it's all just kind of deflated all that. And they said that what I want to work with people that are reliable, that I can trust. And like it just basically this is what I want. I don't want that superstar thing. So yeah, it's a lot of buzzwords and a lot of unnecessary words that you use in.
Yeah, because the truth is, and in AI, I said it earlier, it's not like you're one developer developing this one algorithm and that's the entire system. It requires a team effort to put a complex product out into the market, or, you know, develop something, or, you know, come up with something. So again, you don't necessarily want a single rock star. You want someone who is a team player and can, you know, what we're able to achieve together as a team, that's what matters. So yeah, I'm not really sure where I was going with this, but yeah, and what we're saying also, like at Strice, you don't necessarily need that rock star. You just need someone who is yeah, a team player and wants to do the job with other people.
Yeah, and that brings me back to one of the comments that picked up on this. What measure do we use to evaluate the candidates we get in? And it reminded me of what is probably too good to be a real story about when they first developed IQ tests, where they figured the first tests that men didn't perform well enough on, they were beaten by women and people of color and stuff like that. So they actually adjusted the test so that the group they favored did better. I haven't found a good source for this, so it may just be a rumor, but it makes a point that the scale we use for valuing someone, as Mia mentioned earlier, it isn't neutral. We are choosing a measure, and we are choosing to evaluate someone on certain characteristics. And with those, if those characteristics are maleless, then of course we're not going to do as well. And I also wanted to go into this issue of this kind of to-do list or shopping list of all the brilliant things we want when we hire someone. I wanted to ask you guys also if you think that has something to do with the maturity of our field as well. I recently moved jobs, so I looked at a lot of ads, and for data science AI jobs, they usually want someone who is a data engineer, a data scientist, an analyst, a facilitator, and a business developer, which is at least 5 times as much as one person can do. So is this something that's more problematic in our field, or is it just a part of a general issue in tech?
Well, okay, so now I can speak for academia. Academia is competitive, and there are very clear power structures. And that are characteristics of fields where we see that there is more sexual harassment and that are less welcome to women. And that might be because these properties of a system just appeal more to men, and men strive most in those thrive more in those circumstances. Maybe I don't know, like, do you can you blame this on biology or not? But I checked some numbers, and these numbers are from 2003, but kind of in 2003 where we found most sexual harassment was in the military, and second was in academia, right? So it's really these fields that that bring about these kind of bad characteristics in men, which dominate these fields. So I think that the properties of the environment are really the prime just cause that we have to look at to start with.
So back to not asking women to change, but asking the organizations to change instead.
Yeah, that's my refrain. I don't have any other ideas. Okay.
Yeah,
That's a good
I
one.
think so too. It's like, yeah, why culture and organizations needs to change, and just to keep people working at a place. Like, okay, Strice, regardless of like if it becomes a massive success or if it goes bankrupt, not a single employee will remember that. The only thing that they will remember is how this job made them feel. How did they feel when they work here? That's the only thing that people will remember. And it's just so important to remember that, like, all employers, because that's what everybody will remember. And then it's important to like have a culture that makes everybody feel accepted and fit in, and and it just makes it more fun to go to work. If it's a diverse workplace, it just makes it more fun, and then people will show up, they will remember it as a good job. I mean, that's, easy to say and hard to do, and it might sound a bit naive, but in some ways, that's the reality of it.
And I also think that it's a lot of this comes from the top management, because if top management allows a certain behavior, then that's going to kind of drizzle down to the company. And it's just looking at the example on if you are at a in the English julebord, and you have the CEO or the top management, they are drunk. I mean, even before the dinner starts, what happens then? I mean, most of the other ones actually think, oh yes, so this is actually the culture here, so we can just drink and do it. And it's the same thing with, I mean, sexual harassment. It's with the diversity. It has to start top down. I mean, you have to, as a CEO or a manager, it's actually your responsibility to see to it that actually your organization is working in a specific way, because I mean, it's mirroring basically what's being said at the top. And I mean, everyone has to work for a good workplace. I mean, doesn't have to go always down, top down. But I think it's very important that the CEO is or the top management is really glad of it, or their own responsibility here. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Top management has to be aware of this. And okay, so now we're all kind of young, and Marit comes from a very kind of young and innovative company. But we have to remember that very many of the companies and workplaces that we have antique systems. I've experienced my share of sexual harassment, and I wanted to do stuff the right way and report it to HR and everything. And that must have been like the most uncomfortable processes that I've ever experienced in my life. And I just would never want anybody else to have to go through that at all. So it's kind of it's nice to be a woman when it's nice, but when it's not nice, it's really, really uncomfortable. And you know, slut shaming and victim blaming and all that are really happening in Norway today at various companies. So to change these processes, I think is really the responsibility of everybody involved or not. I think perhaps in particular men who hold more positions of power than women today should kind of be aware of the problems that go on around them. And I mean, we should all kind of be aware that probably if we know a woman, she has experienced sexual harassment or worse. And we should kind of try to become good, I don't know, ambassadors or helpers or allies or whatever, and trying to help improve the systems that are in place right now, because we shouldn't fool ourselves and think that we live in a gender blind society and everything is nice.
I think you make an excellent point there, that this shouldn't be the responsibility of women to fix it. It's everybody's problem. So I see we're approaching the end of the webinar. So I have a couple of questions for you guys to round up. And I've noticed that I'm calling you guys, even though that's not properly gender neutral. So apologies for that. But we've talked a little bit about systemic inequalities and gender inequalities and systemic problems. So you can think about schooling, even kindergarten, university, work, academia, government initiatives. If you would, or can you give me some examples of things we should be doing in one of these areas to make a change to the systemic problems? Other things that can be done, or do we just need to chip away a little bit at a time and hope we'll get there in 500 years?
Is that a leading question?
Slightly, yeah.
I mean, you have these drag and drop coding games for kids. I think that kindergartens should install them and then make all the kids, also the girls, design games and build little cars and whatever. So I think we have to start really early, and then we have to stop kind of giving boys tools for kids now. Toys for building and girls tools for decorating. Of course, if they want to choose those games, they can do that, but we should kind of not lead them on as much as we're currently doing.
And I really agree on that. I have two boys. And I'm really excited to let them try to use the Scratch and those little kind of games to learn how to code. But I also have a little what's it called, niece. She's a little too young yet, but I'm so definitely going to give her the exact same tools as you are going to learn this. And her dad is really into that. So I think we just all have a little responsibility here to just try to kind of encourage that, you know, even video games, and just do the typical voice things. I understand that if a girl really wants to play with a doll instead, yeah, fine. But I mean, maybe just one or two figure out that, oh, you know, gaming was really fun, or coding was really fun. It just takes a little part of it, and then yeah, then you go.
Yeah, same. I'm not sure if I have that much to add. Yeah, just well, for me, as I said, well, maybe hard for Strice to be like, you know, doing recruiting efforts in kindergartens and primary schools, but at least as early as possible at the university, even like posing Strice and that AI is a cool opportunity to. It's just starting out as well. That's well, at least one of the very specific contributions that we and I can do.
Yes,
and it kind of like it goes with aim for us as well, because you know, in order to develop a competitive product like that is used by all kinds of people, you just need all kinds of people making it as well. It's just yeah, goes without saying.
Yeah. I noticed as part of this discussion, we've talked a little bit as if young women are without agency. So the thing you can do as a young person in general to make your way into an interesting position. So I find the question, what advice would you give to a young person who may be interested in working in AI, but is not sure how and in what and why they should choose that before anything else?
Well, so what I always say to students is don't do what you think that you should do. So don't choose topics because you think that they're going to do good on your resume or whatever. Just like really follow your nose and your curiosity, because you can't plan your career. So if somebody's thinking, I would like to work in AI, just kind of find out what part of it appeals to you, and then just really go for that. And like, don't be scared. None of us know what we're doing.
Yeah, I would second that. I don't really have any very intelligent solution there.
Yeah,
no advice for your niece. Sorry.
No, I was just yeah, if any students are interested, do what, like Inga said, don't do what you think you should, but do what you think could be fun. And just like it was it 2 summers ago, we had an internship program for like on product development, tech and product development, and we didn't have any like on the business side because we were just starting out. We were more on a research project still and so forth. But you know, there was a student, he was a guy, and reached out and was like, hey, I'm super interested in AI. I'll come and work for you for free this summer. And I was like, oh, but you know, the problem isn't really, you know, a summer student is not that big of an expense. I was like, no, the problem is more that, you know, we anyone to really follow you up over those weeks. So I don't think it would be a very good experience for you because we don't really have any time. And he was like, no, you know what? Don't worry. Like, we set up something, we'll figure it out. I just really want to work. You don't have to pay me. I just want to come in and like do something for 4 weeks. And he was so persistent, like, and then I was like, oh, I can't say no to this like young and really energetic person. So it of course ended up with him being like hired, paid, because I felt like, oh, I can't have him work here for free. And of course we set aside some time to figure out a project that he could work on. So also if anyone are interested, I mean, it works to just reach out to people and be persistent, or just be like, yeah, I want to. And that experience also left me, because he did it, like he was really, you know, a go-getter. And that experience was also like, oh, okay, I can't just, if we don't have any opportunities, it's only the go-getters that will call us. Like, we need to be very systematic in our student recruiting, which has led us to all do these internships programs and removing these formal requirements from job ads and so forth. So yeah, that was not very specifically formulated, but yeah.
No, but if you want something, go for it. Basically,
Yeah, reach out.
At least out. And well, I think a lot of as Inga said, of course, there's a lot of antique workplaces, but try to reach out to the ones that seem more inclusive. Maybe there are some better opportunities there, and just know that like a lot of people, myself included, have this topic like diversity on their agenda and think about it, and like ask your peers, like, have you any experience with an inclusive workplace, or have you heard about anywhere where there's equal opportunity and so forth.
Yeah. So then I think it's time to wrap up. We've reached our hour of discussion and I've enjoyed it very much. So thank you so very much for your insights. And thank you in the audience for the questions and for following us for this hour. And then hope to see you at a later NORA startup webinar. So thank you and goodbye.
Bye.